It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. Let's get out of here. Aye.
Hello everybody, it's Aaron from Got a Minute. This is my new and updated current thoughts on when the rapture might happen and when the second coming might happen. Now, a little caution here. We've been doing this for a couple of years and we're guessing, we're speculating. So if you don't like guessing and speculating and considering things, this is not the channel for you. Also, please have grace and mercy for all the channels that are trying to figure this out. We are just study things. We're just trying to study and we're trying to be Bereans. We're just really excited for Jesus and to see him in the clouds one day. And so this is my newest speculation, and come along for the ride and come along for the study. I'm going to make this really easy. Hopefully it's going to be easy to understand, and I'm not going to overcomplicate this video. So this is the structure that I'll be kind of looking at for the next year or so if we're still here. And to put it really simply, I believe that the world is about 6,000 years old, and I believe that the final millennial kingdom will be in the final 6,000 to 7,000 year of God's creation. And so the big thing about this is the center point, 969 BC. What's so special about that? And again, just before I talk about that, 3,000 years to the left and 3,000 years to the right of the 6,000 years. So what's so special about this? In the past, I was talking about 971 BC being the potential year that David died. But there's lots of other information now that I found that it looks like 969 is probably the best candidate for the age that David died. Now remember, David got that Davidic covenant given to him. It was promised to David that he would have a future, the Messiah would come from his seed, the Davidic line would come from his seed. And that's 3,000 years from his death. That's perfect. So why 969? It's because it looks like the Assyrian records and the biblical records line up because of that eclipse that was over Nineveh when Jonah went to go preach to them. And it looks like it all lines up, and he was able to backdate it to 1406 when they crossed the Jordan. And then you add that 480 years, and that would get you to 966, the fourth year of Solomon's reign. And so therefore, back it up 4 years, 969 is a really good candidate for the time that David died. So, yeah, and let me say that again in another way. So, David being the one that was given that Davidic covenant, and you can read about that, I believe, in 2 Samuel chapter 7. And so, he would be the center point of the 6,000 years when he died. So that's really significant. 3,000 years to the right could be the second coming. 3,000 years to the left could be the time of the sin date. So again, let's be Bereans and study that out. I was thinking maybe it was 3971, maybe 3970, maybe it's 3969. Is it the sin date? Is it the date when Adam and Eve were created? Well, that's for all of us to study. I know James Ussher had a year, was it 4005 BC as the start of creation, 4004, and things like that. So I'd like to learn more about this. Also, this is more for study for us. Was there anything significant that happened in 2969 and 1969 BC at the 1000 markers? I was just lightly looking at that earlier, so I'll probably look into that a bit more and how it relates to Noah and that kind of thing. So David. And then the other thing too is the oldest guy in the Bible, he got to age 969. Now, how about that? I had two comments. One person on YouTube mentioned this, and one person emailed. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe there is something to it. Methuselah does mean his death shall bring. Well, David's death, right? Methuselah means his death shall bring. His age is 969. We're thinking on this chart that David might have died in 969. So what? His death shall bring the Messiah? Maybe? Isn't that interesting? I don't know. Enoch was taken, it says in Genesis 5, before we understand that Methuselah died in 969, it just says in Genesis 5 that Enoch was taken. And Enoch is a type of the church being raptured. So Enoch taken, Methuselah meaning his death shall bring, David's death maybe will bring the Messiah. That's a neat little parallel there. So put that in your back pocket and we'll see how things play out in the next little while. Moses, he would have died at 120. He left Egypt when he was 40. He came back when he was 80. And he died at 120. So 120 is a significant number. You can divide his life in 3. And there's really been 120 Jubilee cycles since the sin date or the creation date. 6,000 years. So 50 times 120 gets you to the second coming. Moses, his life being an example of the 6,000 years. 40 years in Egypt, 40 years in the wilderness. Or I should say 40 years in Egypt, 40 years outside of Egypt, and then at age 80 he came back to bring him out and release them. And Joshua took over, so when he died. And so it was right here when Joshua took over, and then they went to 7 years of war and divided up their land after all that. Well, that relates to that. So 490 times 7 is 3,430. The Daniel 9 is the 490-year chapter about when the Messiah is going to come and when the final 70th week of Daniel is going to happen. Well, times 7, because you always have to multiply things by 7 according to Leviticus 26 when you're in judgment. Well, that's 3,430 years. So that gets you to 1406, gets you to 2025. And that same math gets you from 1399 to 2032. That works out really, really, really well there. And I did some basic math again. So Moses times 7 is 49 Jubilee cycles since creation. Moses times 50 is 6,000 years since creation. That works out really well. And David's age when he died, 70 times 7 is that number. That works out really well. And David's age times 50 is 3,500, which again, if we have a 7,000 year plan, ultimately, that's exactly, perfectly in the middle of the 7,000 year plan. So David not only died in the middle of the 6,000 year plan, but David times 50, which is the Jubilee number, gets you to the middle of the 7,000 year number. So a lot of numbers. I don't want to confuse it too much. All that being said, the big takeaway here is I think right here. 969, if David truly did die in 969 BC, that's a perfect 3,000 years from there. Also, depending on what year you pick the cross, I purposely didn't write a date in here. I personally think he died in 31 AD, but if it's 32 AD, it's a perfect 1,000 years from when David died to when Christ would have died. If he died in 33, well, there's 1,001 years. If he died in 30, then it gets a little short, 998. So I think he died in 31 AD, Wednesday, April 25th to be exact. Also, everybody's familiar with this, Hosea 6 verse 2, after 2 days, and on the third day, he will revive us. He's talking to Israel. And 2,001 years from the cross is 2032, if you're considering that to be 31 AD. If that's 32 AD, well, it's a clean 2000. So, either way, we're just in this really wonderful, balanced looking chart timeline. And of course, at the bottom here, 49 cycles of 120 and 50 cycles of 120. 49 is the code for Torah. The Torah is coded every 50 steps in Genesis 1. I've shared that a lot. And if you spell Torah backwards in Hebrew, it means behold Ruth. Feast of Weeks is a 49-day count, and on the 50th day, whammo. And also the Jubilee count, when you read it in Leviticus 25, is also every 50 years is your Jubilee. So this all kind of lines up with all the biblical patterns. And God's a pretty cool God. And he's really structured. And I know when we get up there, whenever we get up there, I think that he's going to have some amazing chart, just incredible chart. I think we're going to be looking at the Word of God in like a 3-dimensional way. I think it's going to be so cool when we get there. I'm so excited to figure out when this is all going to happen. But right now, just to be clear, my favorite candidate is Feast of Weeks, right in 2025. And if it's not 2025, well, we'll see where we're at that point, and we'll go from there. But that means there's not much time, guys. And you're not guaranteed tomorrow. So put your faith and trust in God and Jesus. He died on the cross for you. There's no other way to heaven except through his blood. Okay, we're one day closer. See you in the clouds. Adios. Go Jesus, go.